I disagree that the art world has dissociative identity disorder. Chapter 6 of I'm Not an Artist by Giovanni Aloi is titled Institutional Dissociative Identity Disorders. The premise is that the art world has DID, yet the evidence given shows a lack of understanding of the nature of this disorder. Personally, I don't think the art world has dissociative identity disorder. A better way to describe the compartmentalization of the art world is in the metaphor of the shadow. While everyone has a shadow, generally only those who go through trauma before the age of 7 to 9 will develop DID. Arguably, the art world does not have a trauma issue, it has a greed issue. The control of the art world by the wealthy elites of society does not cause the art world to splinter into fragments that can't communicate. Rather, there is a singular underbelly within the art world. The shadow makes more sense as a metaphor for this phenomenon, exemplified by this 1925 print by Martin Lewis titled The Great Shadow, showing that the shadow lurks within every person. I thought about how to best approach this chapter, as I have agreed with the bulk of I'm Not an Artist by Giovanni Aloi. However, I don't feel comfortable endorsing this chapter. Instead, I will attempt to dissect how the metaphor of DID is being used to explain the dissonance within the art world. One of the first arguments for this metaphor appears when Aloi states that, quote, if capitalism is a cultural disease, then the dissociative identity disorders that pervade academia is among its most pronounced symptoms. Taken as a metaphor, dissociative identity disorder is a condition that afflicts all art institutions, faculty, and students alike. It is contagious. Contradicting ideological personalities inhabit the same institution or individual. Unquote, Aloi 105. While I agree that capitalism is a cultural disease, I disagree that dissociative identity disorders are a symptom of this disease. A disorder is not synonymous with a symptom. DID has its own set of symptoms and is not a disease or contagious or in need of a cure. The cure for DID is creating a society that is gentle and does not traumatize children from a young age onward. Likewise, the cure for capitalism is creating social safety nets for the most vulnerable and rules in place to limit the greed of those who seek to exploit the majority of the population. Aloi goes on to describe 3 personalities existing among art collectors. Quote, the art market is a wilderness that remains thoroughly unregulated and intricately non-transparent. For this reason, its higher peaks, auction houses included, have become a haven for financial speculation and money laundering. Up until the Second World War, dealers would buy art cheaply at auction for collectors. But more recently, auctions have become alternative and unmissable investment opportunities for the hyper-rich. Some investors are genuine art lovers. Others are speculators who solely buy art for profit, while others are essentially interested in buying a status symbol trophy. These 3 personalities often overlap to some degree. Unquote, Aloi 111 to 112. While this raises some useful critiques about the use of art objects as status symbols and investment opportunities, I would argue that these 3 personalities are not DID personalities. I feel like there is a misunderstanding of what DID entails and what it means to contain a personality that is at odds with other personalities. The 3 personalities named here are not at odds with one another. Rather, these 3 traits of the ultra-wealthy function in harmony. If one loves art and wants to gain profit and likes having a trophy, then the art market is the perfect place for this sort of individual. This is represented in both the harmony and dissonance in The 3 Musicians by Pablo Picasso. A personality in the context of dissociative identity disorder means that part of the self, also referred to as an alter, gets sectioned off and is markedly different from other parts of that individual. This can look different across DID systems, but one example is an alter that wants to be an artist, as opposed to an alter that does not enjoy making art and would rather play video games or study science. These two parts existing within the same body can cause issues for the system when these parts switch in the wrong contexts. For example, while drawing a picture, there is a switch to the science-loving part. This now active alter is not the one equipped to draw a picture. On the website of the Plural Association, there is a resource guide for understanding dissociative identity disorder that states the following. Quote, many people with DID come to experience multiple identities as a creative survival strategy, often tied to repeated adversity or trauma in childhood. The child's developing mind learns to compartmentalize overwhelming feelings or events into separate self-states, headmates, or alters, thereby preserving some continuity and resilience. Later, in adulthood, these same identities might retain unique emotional tones, skill sets, or age ranges. While past adversity can lead to struggles with memory gaps or distressing flashbacks, the multiplicity itself can also become a stable, cooperative internal community, especially when approached with affirmation and understanding. Unquote. While this week's essay is not so much focused on art, it is true that creativity plays a role in mental health. To create is to shape one's world, and it is ingenious that children are able to creatively navigate their emotional realities. There is a misconception that DID is a rare condition. Rather, plurality is a spectrum, and more people fall along this than is often realized. Take the following chart, also from the Plural Association website. DID systems are plentiful, and like we talked about in Chapter 5, the infinity of currencies, it is possible to exist in one's body in an infinite number of ways. Money is not finite, and neither are the ways a personality can form. Aloi makes a reference in this chapter to art being a type of currency that, while not intended as an analogy for DID, does capture some aspects of this disorder. Quote, at the top level of the art market, it is no longer the voice of the muses one hears, but that of investment companies serenading the super rich. Sometimes a work of art acquired at auction for investment never leaves the crate in which it is packaged. It travels straight from the auction house to a Freeport tax haven in Geneva, Beijing, or Singapore. There it will wait in climate-controlled darkness, like a luxury wine or a gold Rolex watch, until it is sold at auction. Again, a few years later. It's true, art can be pure currency. Unquote. Aloi 112. This is perhaps the closest to an accurate analogy about DID in this chapter. A DID part is akin to a work of art that is put in a crate and stored in climate-controlled darkness, waiting until they are needed again. Many DID systems experience parts that get buried so deep due to trauma that the main host or collection of main parts will have no idea that this resource, perhaps a resilient part who is good at navigating difficulties, is available to the system for many years, laying dormant until something triggers them to the surface. However, the reality of art objects as pure currency does still ring true. Art is often just a resource of the ultra-wealthy, waiting in boxes until it is at maximum value and then resold to the highest bidder. The ecosystem of the art world is at odds with many of those creating art. While I'm not arguing that art has to be pure to change the world, I do think that art can change the world without needing to have a dollar value. The most radical art is probably that which is least valuable to the rich. That is why craft, performance art, and the land and body-based arts discussed in the last chapter are all such powerful factors in creating social change. Ultimately, it is disheartening to see the continuation of stigma about DID in an academic context. While I will continue to sing the praises of I'm not an artist, it will be with the footnote to skip chapter 6, or at least read it with some advanced understanding of the stigma associated with dissociative identity disorder. Being one of the most misunderstood and demonized mental health conditions, I do not appreciate DID being used as an analogy for all that is wrong in the art world. The metaphor of the shadow would have been a better fit for this chapter. as the shadow is an innate part of every self. Every person can connect with their shadow and reintegrate the differing desires and intentions within their conscious self and unconscious self. The art world has a lot of growing to do in order to be a beacon of future hopes and dreams. A lot of people are disillusioned with the ways the art world functions and have chosen to disengage from art practices like studying art history, attending galleries, or making art of their own. On the other hand, this creates a rich side of possibility for craft to fill in this gap. I have been to so many local events where creators sell their wares for reasonable prices. It is a great feeling to support a local maker instead of pouring that money into the hands of a corporation. Rather than buying gifts from any number of corporate retailers, let us strive to source our gifts and art objects locally. Every dollar into the hands of a small business is more creation potential for that neighbor or friend of yours. You are not just supporting their business, you are encouraging that person that what they make can impact their community.